In this exercise, you will assume that a three-tiered web application will be built on Amazon Web Services. The first tier will be the web front end, the second will be the Windows application server, and the third will be a MySQL database. Some considerations include: how do you ensure high availability of the web application? How do we enable scalability if the demand requires it? What are the data at rest security considerations at each of the three tiers? Now pause the video and perform the exercise steps and come back to listen to the results. The first consideration for our three-tiered web application was high availability. This can be planned for by designing for failure, where we identify single points of failure, such as single instances that host a service. We should also consider graceful failover with elastic IPs. That way, if we have a failed instance, another one can take its place and it can assume the elastic IP the failed instance was using. We might consider maintaining customized AMIs to restore environments quickly. We can use multiple availability zones for high availability. We can use EBS and automated snapshots so that if we have a problem, we can revert back to one of the snapshots. We could use CloudWatch for monitoring, and we could use RDS automated backup. The second consideration was scalability. The first thing we consider with this is decoupling components. We want to make sure there aren't too many interdependencies. We could bundle application or package components within customized AMIs. We can also have components designed with service interfaces so that it's easy for them to communicate back and forth. We can also make sure that applications are built to be stateless, so there's no dependency on previous session information. We can also use simple queue service for message queuing. This lends itself to decoupling of components because components don't need to talk directly to one another. One producer component could drop a message into a queue, and a consuming component could then read the message from the queue. We should also consider using auto-scaling groups, whereby if we need to add more instances because of heavy traffic to our website, then auto-scaling could do that. Elasticity is another component. Our application components should be location agnostic. We should also think about just enough operating system, or GEOS. The purpose of this is to ensure we have a scaled down operating system that only runs the components that are required. As we mentioned, auto-scaling groups are very useful in terms of automatic provisioning of resources or deprovisioning when needed. We should also think about deployment and resource tools like Chef and Puppet. We can also configure the monitoring of system metrics, and based on those, configure alarms for auto-scaling actions. We can also use SimpleDB to store and retrieve configuration data. It gets treated as a web service. For the security considerations at each tier, we would start with the MySQL database, where we could use some of the built-in cryptographic functions that are part of MySQL. We might consider using hashing to secure personally identifiable information or PI. And we should also think about placing the database instance in a secured VPC. For Windows servers, we might consider using BitLocker or EFS on EBS for dealing with file system encryption. For the web server tier, we should consider using S3 encryption for static content, and of course using TLS or SSL transport encryption for data transmitted over the network.